I know you can hear me because I have a loud voice, but can you hear me on the microphone now? Yes. Excellent. Good to see you for this afternoon's session about strengthening democratic institutions and gender equality policies in the context of what the EU considers its priorities for the next 5 years. You will hear from a range of expert voices. I will call some of those experts on stage right now, and there will also be an opportunity, of course, through Slido and also through questions in the room for you to add your expertise as well. So let's start our panel session with Marieke Weir-Wolters. Thank you, Marieke, for joining us. Alexandra Silva. And if you're thinking, hold on a minute, I just saw Alexandra in a workshop, you did. She is multitasking like the boss that she is. No. And at some point, we will be joined by Nikolai Stefanuta, who is an MEP. And now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, my co-host, co-moderator, Guy.
I'm joking. Just wait for my mic to turn on. So, before we start this panel, we are again going to have the EIGE perspective, and I'm going to be asking a few questions to the team leader for gender mainstreaming at the European Institute of Gender Equality, Helena Moraes Matheria. Helena, good luck as she walks on. So, Helena's been working on a report that's coming out in spring, and we're not allowed to know what's in it, but we're allowed to have a sneak peek. Is that right?
Right.
A sneak peek. So I'm going to be asking some questions about that. So the European Union, its member states, and the European Commission have all agreed to make a push for gender mainstreaming. They made that promise about 20 years ago. And for the past 10 years, EIGE has been collecting data to measure how that progress is going. So my first question is, if you're allowed to tell us, what does the data that you're going to release in the spring tell us about gender equality bodies in the European Union member states?
Okay, thank you. Well, the data tell us that member states need to strengthen their gender equality bodies to put gender equality goals at the forefront of the policy. Okay, so we just heard this morning that the gender equality bodies need to be at the highest hierarchical level of the government, and the data tell us that in 3 member states, the governmental gender equality bodies is located at the highest level of administration, functioning as an entire ministry. The gender equality bodies also need to have a clearly defined mandate. Here, the data tells us that 11 member states have governmental bodies exclusively devoted to gender equality, and 16 member states have the governmental bodies mandate combined with gender equality and other equality-related functions. Similar trends were observed when it comes to independent gender equality bodies, where 5 member states retain a body exclusively dedicated to gender equality, and the rest have combined gender equality with other grounds. These bodies have reported a shrunk capacity as the expansion of functions has not always been matched with an increase of resources, necessary resources, okay? The data also revealed lack of comprehensive frameworks and accountability mechanisms. 16 member states have action plans, gender equality action plans in place, but out of these, 9 member states have plans that include specific targets, that regularly monitor progress about gender equality outcomes, and further on accountability, the data tells us that in 9 member states, there is a system where the governmental body regularly reports to the parliaments. To implement these national gender equality strategies, the bodies need resources. And many gender equality bodies have reported insufficient human resources and funding, and this hampers their ability to lead on gender equality policy and fulfill their mandate effectively. But the key area, the area where there is more room for improvement, is gender mainstreaming. There we have seen a decline in efforts since 2020-21. 14 member states have a legal obligation to implement gender mainstreaming. In no member state, this obligation is made enforceable. You ask me, what does this mean in practical terms?
Yep.
And I'm going to give you a few examples. The tools, the gender mainstreaming tools to consider a gender equality perspective in legislation, in policies, in funds, in budgets, in programs, the use of these tools is not widespread. So examples on gender budgeting. 6 member states have reported gender budgeting to be widely used in ministries. 9 consider gender budgeting to be in its foundational stages. And 10 reported gender budgeting to be a practically unknown concept. Another example is the decrease in efforts to produce gender statistics and to disseminate gender statistics. 11 member states have no web section or a web dedicated to gender statistics, and this is a core enabling condition for any gender equality, gender mainstreaming work.
I think it's amazing that IGA is looking at it from this way and actually being able to map it out. And I can see people taking a photo of the data that you're sharing, which I think just shows us how important it is. Now, I understand that for this research, you also interviewed some civil society organizations, and obviously that gives you a very interesting and slightly different perspective, especially on a national level. So what did they tell you about the situation on a country level from these CSOs?
Yes, exactly. We also talked with the CSOs, and they told us, I'm going to highlight 4 key findings, okay? 4. First one, that the institutions responsible for gender equality are often relegated to a secondary position, secondary level of administration. The second one, that the transformative impact of gender equality strategies falls short due to a lack of enforcement in member states. The third one would be that the integration of intersectional approach remains an emerging practice across member states. And the fourth one is that the need, or in many member states, for a comprehensive approach that goes beyond violence and covers, for example, other areas such as economic capacity, decision-making, or fighting gender stereotypes.
Fascinating. And I understand that also there are quite a few voices, perhaps also legal voices, who want to see these civil society organizations given more prevalence, more involved, more support. I was wondering from your research, what's your take on that?
Yes. Here, civil society organizations said that there is a lack of systematic involvement in policy development, and this undermines the effectiveness of their participation. They also mentioned that they face resource constraints, and this it's a challenge for them because consultations often rely on unpaid contributions, but also because it limits their capacity to implement long-term transformative actions. They also mentioned, and this came out this morning as well, the emergence of conservative anti-gender movements as a significant challenge. A challenge because these movements have been and have gained social and political influence and created an environment where advocacy for gender equality faces significant opposition. And this affects CSO's capacity to be heard.
Okay, so I was wondering, how do those country level results scale onto an EU level?
Yes. So the situation is similar at EU level. 2 years ago, the European Court of Auditors assessed the mainstreaming of Commission's 5 horizontal priorities into the EU budget. ECHA, the European Court of Auditors, assessed gender equality, but also climate change, biodiversity, SDGs, the SDGs, and digital transformation. And they found that gender equality is the least well-integrated priority in the EU budget, despite being the first one in being adopted. The 29th EU framework then actually presents, together with the new gender equality strategy and the long-term EU budget, the MFF, an opportunity for the Commission, for the Parliament, and for the European Council to make gender equality a priority. A priority with clear targets, with monitoring mechanisms and dedicated resources. And here there is a possibility to renew the commitment for gender mainstreaming, to design a whole of government or whole of commission strategy to implement, coordinate, and institutionalize gender mainstreaming. It's an opportunity to strengthen the gender equality bodies at national level, but also in all EU institutions and agencies. And here, in line with the EU's better regulation agenda, it's an occasion to improve the effectiveness of our policies and programs by making the use of ex-ante and ex-post impact assessment mandatory for all programs and across all policy areas. This includes the European Structural Investment Funds, the CAP, the RRF, the Social Climate Fund, and a future possible European Competitiveness Fund. And in this sense, EIGE has researched and can highlight that the gender equality is a core element for all EU priorities because it's not only a matter of social justice, it's also smart economics. And actually, the graph on the screen shows an increase of 9.6% of GDP per capita by 2050 if gender gaps in labor market and STEM were narrowed. So there is an opportunity to set financial targets and enabling conditions related to access to EU funding. There is an opportunity to adopt a comprehensive gender budgeting approach across all programs of the next MFF to put the EU on track to leave no one behind and ensure the sustainability of life and the sustainability of planet.
Thank you so much. So that was your sneak peek into this exciting report that's coming out in the spring. Thank you so much, Elena.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Guy. Nikolai Stefanuta, welcome. We won't steal your bag, so you can leave it in the front row if you would like to. Okay. Nice to see you. Welcome.
Hello.
So our conversation this afternoon, Nikolai, Alexandra, Marika, is about strengthening democratic institutions and gender equality policies in the light of the EU's political priorities for the next 5 years. Just so our audience who are watching here in Brussels and also online get a sense of what you're bringing to this conversation, we very briefly say who you are, what you do, how that fits in to what we're about to talk about. Marika, you start.
Hi, I'm Marijke Weewaters from the Belgian Institute for Equality Between Women and Men. I'm the Senior Strategic Policy Advisor, and I will bring in, since more than 17 years, we have a law on gender mainstreaming. What works, what doesn't work, what should be improving on this one.
Alexandra.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Silva. I'm coming from the Portuguese Platform for Women's Rights, which is a platform of NGOs working in the field of women's human rights and equality between women and men. And we do a lot of shadow reports, so we monitor policy making, and we present our recommendations based on evidence collected within our members.
Nikolai.
Hi, my name is Nikolai Stefanuta, and I hope I'm not here just as the man in the panel, but also as somebody who's an ally of the cause and who's the VP of the European Parliament in charge of gender equality, together with other colleagues. I'm not the only vice president doing that, but I'm very proud to do that. And in addition, a member of the budget committee and a shadow rapporteur for gender mainstreaming in budgets.
Mm-hmm. All right, so panel speakers, we're not going to do this conversation in silos. So you hear something that resonates, say so. You want to ask a question to each other's, please say so. Marika, let's start here. What we're talking about is, it's a challenge. Right? What are we going to do in the next 5 years to strengthen global gender equality policies? From your perspective.
It's not sexy, but I'm going to say what she is saying. We need to improve gender mainstreaming. On a European level, we have to institutionalize it. It's not sexy. What is that monster of gender mainstreaming? But it's really thinking in front, ex ante. What are we going to do? And every law, every conclusion, every policy, are we going with this policy? We have to assess, is this working for women and men? Is it working differently for women and men? If we are not doing gender mainstreaming, assess this in front, you will cause discrimination. We have a case law on this one. Not being gender neutral in your preventive and your measures and your policy is causing discrimination or is increasing some discrimination. We have the law in Belgium since 2007. It's working. It's gender test, it's gender budgeting. We have a monitoring process. We have institutions. We have gender coordinators on the cabinet level, on the administrative level. We have politic agreement. We have politic assessment. We are assessing this. It's a law. It's institutionalizing. It's enough. I thought in 2007 it's done. It's enough. It's not. We have to have gender experts. We have to have collaboration with NGOs, with those who are reporting shadow reports, who are killing us sometimes, but we need them. We have to have gender experts, because civil servants can't do it by themselves. We thought so. We have a law, civil service has to oblige the law. That doesn't work in itself. You have to screen. You have to have expertise on gender. You have to have technical support, because gender budgeting, it's not easy. We have, for example, screened, because the politics last government said we will go for a new penal code. It's gender neutral. We said, oh, we screened everything. No, that's not gender neutral. And they collaborated with us. We screened them. We have screened every political commitment in front of, in ex ante. We did it in the beginning of the government. We screened them all, and it was working. Two decades ago, 35 political commitments, last government, but nearly 2,000 commitments on doing gender mainstreaming on every level, in the policy commitment and in the gender budgeting and in the gender processes. It's not easy. You have to have a collaboration and togetherness and monitoring process.
And I would add, following what you said, that we need to be bold. We need to stop being fear of our actions, because we really think that gender equality or equality between women and men is not advancing as we would expect with all the provisions we have in place, because we are fearing that we will be rotulated as feminist or something like that, and that policies will not advance. For us, it's very important what you said, to have this connection, this what we call the civic dialogue, structured civic dialogue between governments, the parliament and the women's rights NGOs. I would say not only CSOs, but women's rights NGOs. Why do I really focus on women's rights NGOs? They are smaller because they are women's organizations, so they depend a lot on public funding, and public funding is decreasing on these topics. They are very specialized on what they do, because most of them provide service. For example, for victims of violence against women, different forms of violence, not only intimate partner violence, but also prostitution, pornography, and surrogacy, etc. So they provide services. So they know what is the reality of every day. It is important for governments and parliaments to act together with women's rights NGOs. We also think that all this evolution that we see on equality between women and men, it's not something that happens increasing, because we know there's a tendency to go up and down very quickly. And we now see this tendency of the erosion, of the elimination of the concept of sex, and even of the word woman, taking out of the political documents. And for us, this is going back again several years, several decades, really.
Nicolai, we're leaning into the EU's political policies for the next 5 years. We're understanding that there's a framework with which we can strengthen democratic institutions and also gender equality policies. What more can you add as an MEP? Where should the hope be?
It's a mighty delicate subject, I might say. I don't know if you probably followed. You seem like people who follow politics and European politics in particular. I have two concerns. One, defunding of NGOs. I don't know if you are aware of the topic, but right now there's a war coming from the right on NGOs and NGOs' ability to lobby for issues such as women's rights. Yesterday in the CONT committee, budgetary control, I had a debate with the Front National MEP who said, why the hell are we funding NGOs that support abortion rights, since abortion rights are not EU competence? and I said, I beg your pardon, every human right is part of the EU competence. Every health right is part of EU competence, but this is the era we are in. Don't get me wrong, but we are in a war over values. And 2024 Parliament, unfortunately, came back to be more right, more extreme right. We have a traditional conservative right, which is very happy to embrace the extreme right. So that is a big, big challenge for the years ahead, because from that structure of the Parliament, from the structure of the Commission, we can deduce that it's not going to be easy. Secondly, on gender budgeting, even if for the 2021-2027, you remember that there was no gender budgeting structure when it first came out. So it was the Parliament who had to fight for it and to get some lines and some gender budgeting. Now, can you imagine the MFF in the context of war, of the rise of extreme right, of disinformation, etc. So my message here is clear and simple. And all this week I've been talking on the human rights aspect, on gender equality, on minority rights, etc. My message always was, do not give up the pressure. This is the time not to let go of the pressure, because it might backfire. I know it's an often misquoted Churchill quote, no? About when he was talking about slashing the budget for culture. It wasn't apparently a Churchill quote, but nevertheless everybody quotes it as such. When he said, then what are we fighting for if we cut culture? Well, I have the same approach as regards human rights, about equality. You know, if we have a situation where security is at the top of the agenda, what exactly are we fighting for? Aren't we fighting for a Europe of freedom and of equality? I think we are. So my message is this: don't let go of the pressure now.
Alexandra, there was a look of recognition when Nikolai was talking about NGOs being defunded.
Yeah. We have little resources, so we have the expertise, but year by year we lose the expertise because we have to survive as individuals. We are being defunded. Even those providing services, I'm speaking about the reality in Portugal. Even those providing services sometimes are being cut in funds, and sometimes they have to be very imaginative, so they have to look for other forms of getting some money, even for shelters. So this is going very problematic. We see that we sometimes are based on our funding is based on projects which really requires expertise to do the proposals and to get the funding. But then we have also a lot of time consuming on managing the funding, on presenting all the supporting documents that we need. And this takes our time and our energy from what it is really important, like you said, which is putting the pressure on politics. And we see this as a tendency, so we have to do the project. We have to, and the projects sometimes are not really transformative. They are mostly about, to provide services or to do raising awareness activities, but they are not so transformative as the pressure we can do it at a political level. And this is problematic. We also, for example, in our platform, we were also involved in gender budgeting on the pilot project that started in 2018 in Portugal. And we saw it becoming part of the state budget, the gender budgeting perspective. But then if you look at 2018 until now, we don't see a lot of transformation occurring inside the state budget. We need really more commitment, going beyond what we call it the tick the box administrative gender mainstreaming to effective gender mainstreaming, transforming policies and the lives of women and men in Europe.
Marika, you've written so much in
Yeah.
your notebook. Go ahead and share it with us.
I'm going to say what's working in Belgium, what could be better, and this one is really decreasing the funding for NGOs, decreasing the money goes to gender-based violence, decreasing, that's for me, gender budgeting. This is really neat, but because we are monitoring is not evaluating. We should have more power to evaluate. And this is a key problem. We need a transformative policy. We need this one. We don't have this in Belgium as well. And I really look up to this, the power to the parliament. The parliament, even in Belgium, should be looking on the reality of gender budgeting. What is transformative policy on gender budgeting? Do we really do the gender budgeting? Do it enough? Do we do the gender test? Do it enough? Because they're not doing their job on parliament. And this is really evaluating, not monitoring. That should be doing, and really looking at what is changing the policy in a good way or in a bad way. Do we do good governance or do we not do good governance for every citizen in the world? Because we are civil servants. We have to serve the citizens and not only the reference white man, but every citizen.
Yeah.
We are in a war against values, which is what Nikolai was saying. We anticipated this war against values. We wanted Hilde Coffey to join us. She's going to be speaking about rethinking gender equality when there is a backlash going on. Hilde, the lectern is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I don't know whether the slides will show up. Should I? Oh, there you go. So good afternoon, I'm Hilde Coffey, professor in politics at the University of Bath, and together with colleagues from across different universities in Europe, we included questions on gender, gender identity, sexism, gender discrimination, support for gender equality in the European Social Survey. So it was often highlighted this morning the need for data. Hopefully those data will allow cross-national European analysis on all those attitudes. They are freely available for those interested. And so the ideas behind the questionnaire came from what we saw, and what was Nikolai was also referring to, that war of values. At the same time also, in some respects, increased gender equality. So that contradiction of a backlash and increased gender equality led us to develop the questionnaire to get a deeper understanding of what is happening. So what I want to present today is, this is our first analysis, so for us it's also exciting to finally have the data which have been collected at least, and they are available already for 24 countries now. And what I wanted to present today is focusing on young people, given the interests of young people here today and tomorrow, and look at three different aspects that we've studied, namely sexism, attitudes toward gender equality, and also support for gender equal policies. So starting with sexism, and there's different measures of sexism, and there's more really that hostile sexism or benevolent sexism. But what I present here today is that we made an index of measuring attitudes based on how often women seek to gain power by controlling or by getting control over men, how often women get easily offended, and how often women exaggerate claims of sexual harassment in the workplace, with higher values referring to more sexist attitudes. And what we see here is a combination of, so the vertical line is indicating the sexist attitudes, and on the x-axis or the horizontal line is the gender equality index from 2023. So those are general sexist attitudes in different countries. Higher is more sexist, lower is less sexist. So you see that they're a little bit all over the place, so there doesn't seem to be a very strong link with the gender equality index. You see, for example, Belgium and the Netherlands generally high on the gender equality index, but not particularly low, which would be obviously a good sign, on sexist attitudes. So you do see them a little bit all over the place. Finland appears to be the least sexist, women and men, this is. And then turning to gender differences between women and men, again, it's young women and men. We do see that in all countries except Cyprus, men score higher, so men are more sexist than women. There's several countries with very large gender gaps, including, for example, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Italy, Slovakia, Croatia, even in Sweden, generally seen as a good example also, as we saw this morning, highest or scoring best on the Gender Equality Index. We also see a relatively large gender gap among the young people. There's a relatively small gap in the Netherlands. So I think in terms of the gender difference, the Netherlands is scoring well here. Moving to the second measure that I wanted to show here today is gender attitudes toward gender equality, or general attitudes toward gender equality in society. So here we look at the gender attitudes toward gender equality in different domains, including family, politics, business, and economy. And looking here at those general attitudes among young people, again, showing it in relation to the Gender Equality Index, we do see a much stronger link than for sexist attitudes, where we see much more support for gender equality in countries that score high on the Gender Equality Index. Highest score is in Portugal, not very strong, which is, I would say, at a medium score on the Gender Equality Index, but on general attitudes toward gender equality, they score relatively high. Looking then at the gender differences, so here too we see significant gender differences in all countries, with women showing much more support for gender equality compared with men. And we do see here also that there are cross-national differences in the sizes of the gap. They are particularly high in Cyprus, Croatia, we see. But we also see Sweden again, that there is this gender gap even in those countries where they generally score high on the Gender Equality Index. A final measure that I wanted to show here today are the attitudes towards policies, and we've asked those for different, and again in different domains, for example, towards parental leave, equal parliamentary representation, gender pay gap, sexual harassment in the workplace, and the latter is also that I'll show here on the data. So higher values here shows unsupportive. So it's really a disagreement. We don't need those policies. There's enough gender equality, etc. So again, first showing the link with the Gender Equality Index, we do see some link, not as strong as for general attitudes toward gender equality, but we do see some link here. Here, I remember disagreement that employees should be fired when they don't address harassment. So that's a higher score. So here we see that Portugal has the lowest score, meaning that there's most support of the need to fire an employee when they show sexual harassment. But again, strong gender differences with women being systematically less or more supportive of, yes, they should be handled and it should be addressed and it should be, employees should be fired when they show such behavior. Again, also cross-national differences in the size of the gender gap, with the largest, again, gender gaps in Ireland, Poland, Iceland, but also in Finland. So you do see that there's variety in the countries, but that again, that in most countries, or that even in all countries, women score to be more supportive of gender equality, in this case measured as the policy to fire employee when they show sexual harassment. So to conclude, I think we show that there's differences in attitudes towards gender equality among young women and young men, with young women generally being more supportive of gender equality than young men across Europe. There are important cross-national differences, both in general attitudes and also in the sizes of the gender differences. There is some link with the Gender Equality Index, though it's not strong for sexist attitudes. And I think then the question that we can discuss here, maybe also in the panel, is really about young men and those gender differences between women and men. As I said, those are explorative first data, but looking at older generation and older age groups, we do see that the gap seems to be larger among the young people than the older generation. So it's really, will we see a life cycle effect that maybe we see a change over time as those younger generations get older, or is this really a generational effect with, of course, young people having very different lived experiences, different social expectations compared with older age groups. We've also seen in recent elections that young men tend to be overrepresented among populist radical right voters, and we know that those parties generally oppose efforts to advance gender equality. They often frame gender equality initiatives as threats towards traditional family roles, cultural norms, national identity also. So we do also see there that overrepresentation of young men, indicating that they maybe have less of those libertarian values compared with women. So again, for the panel, I think this is an interesting issue and definitely needs further research and an investigation on what ways cause young men to hold those values. Thank you.
Hilda, please stay in the front row because I know there will be questions coming to you. We are about to see gender equality in action because Nikolai, where are you going?
I mean, I don't want to use this excuse, but I don't have childcare and my wife has a business meeting and I have to go.
Okay. How many times have women had to leave early because of childcare? So this is gender equality in action. Nikolai, it was brief but impactful, your contribution. Thank you very much.
I really apologize for having to go, but thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Marika, that pushback, the data that Hilda presented, what jumped out at you?
The fact that we have a backlash, we know it. Even more than 31 years working on gender. I'm in a niche, I don't see it, but I'm confronted with it. When I give training to civil servants, every civil servant on what is gender all about, what's not sex, what gender, I explain, I give examples, really examples, tailored examples. That is why the data from EGE is very useful, really giving examples. This is what gender is all about. I give some really, for example, we all know that the bikini science, we all know that medicines are not tested on women, for example. This is for me gender discrimination. They say, okay. Then I say, at that point, sleeping medication is, for example, more heavier than for women than for men. Okay, what do I have to do? But the consequences is that in the morning, for example, car accidents are more likely to be caused by women. So there's a consequence. Giving this data, given these examples, data on hate speech, more hate speech towards everyone. We have seen the data, also surveys on this one. If hate speech is occurring and it's institutionalized, we don't have to be naive on this one. It's institutionalized. It's not one-to-one. It's patriarchal against women. When it's, and this is the data showing us, when it's gone up on the data on hate speech, and there's no response from the institute, there's no response for women associations, it's going up, and we are not responding anymore collectively. We are really backlashing as well as women associations or institutes. And when we don't react, it's still going up. But when we are reacting collectively on the main stage, digitally, it's going down. So we have to be more careful, aware of this happening, and we have to react collectively on the main way to respond together.
I think I'm not very surprised about your results, because we know, in fact, that the sexism exists and is persisting and is increasing. And we know that young men are really more sexist than the men of my generation. And we cannot disconnect this from pornography. This is very clear from us. Because pornography is very violent and portrays women as objects and empowers men's sexuality over women's sexuality. This gives also, and it's very sexist, this also portrays what we can expect on attitudes of young men also. So it's putting all the dots connected that really show us the reasons behind the numbers that you presented here. There, yeah.
I'm going to give the forum audience in the main stage area a 5 minutes heads up for your questions, your thoughts, your statements. You can ask anybody who you've heard in the last hour or so, apart from Nikolai, who has to leave, but anybody else. If you've got your thoughts, your ideas, we'll get the microphones ready, and then we'll come to you for that interactive exchange of ideas and questions. But I'm going to bring in Sabrina Farina. She is the Policy Officer of DG Reform. Sabrina, would you mind standing up? A microphone will come to you. What Sabrina is going to do is give us an example of gender mainstreaming in a particular context. Because what we're looking at is how to strengthen gender equality policies. And you bring an example with you. Sabrina, thank you.
Yes, so thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'm bringing the perspective from DG Reform, from the Technical Support Instrument, where we are working with the Gender Flagship Project. So just for those who don't know, the Technical Support Instrument is an EU-funded program that supports member states in designing and delivering reforms in all policy areas. Mm-hmm. So in 2022, we launched the Gender Flagship to support member states. Should I turn? Sorry. To support member states specifically in their efforts regarding gender mainstreaming. And the project was launched. The TSI, Technical Support Instrument, is a demand-driven program, which means that member states come to us and with specific requests and are committed to implement and deliver certain reforms. So we received requests from 13 administrations from the local, regional, and national level to support them in introducing gender mainstreaming into their public policies as well as in budget processes. And the context from the member states, of course, was very different, but all in all, the support that they received concerned the revision, the analysis of their legal frameworks so that they could be better informed on how to introduce gender mainstreaming in their policies. We supported them providing capacity building on how to concretely apply gender mainstreaming and all the tools related to gender mainstreaming. So we delivered trainings on gender impact assessment, on gender responsive budgeting, and several other tools. But we also provided peer learning opportunities for member states to exchange and to deep dive on specific topics. So if I have still a minute, maybe I'll give a concrete example of what we did, for example, in Greece. So Greece introduced gender mainstreaming into its gender equality legislation in 2019, but the core request when they came to the European Commission to be supported was really how to implement gender mainstreaming in the practice. So the work, excuse me, that we have done with Greece, specifically with the General Secretariat for Equality and Human Rights, was to deliver what we call a gender mainstreaming circular. So this became a binding set of guidelines that is meant to support the ministries in Greece to really make the shift from the theory to the practice. So how to concretely initiate the gender mainstreaming of the policies, of the legislation in Greece. So the project is still ongoing for Greece and for all the other member states. The end of the project will be next year, so we'll have concrete results by the end of next year. But what we are doing now is already a huge step forward to really, as I said, move and start to work in practice and implement the change in a more concrete level. So I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabrina. Appreciate you. Okay. We would like to see where the questions, the thoughts, the feedback is. If you're able to, please stand and the microphone will come to your hand. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for such an engaging conversation. My name is Annelies Koessens. I am a policy officer from the Council of European Municipalities and Regions. And local authorities are part of strengthening our gender equality and democratic institutions, but they haven't really been mentioned at all today. They have good practices. They have been implementing gender mainstreaming and gender budgeting. They have gender experts at the local level, but they haven't been discussed at all today. And they're the closest to the citizens in terms of implementation, in terms of prevention, in terms of cyber violence and gender-based violence. So my question to the room and the panelists is, how can we strengthen their voices to be heard at the local level, at the national level, and in the international level as well, institutions, because clearly there's a gap of hearing their voices heard on these platforms. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Marika.
I said applause. Here. I say the same thing. Like I was saying, gender mainstreaming is needed. It should be done. It should be obligated. It should be done. But you can't do it by yourself. It should be transformative policy, checking, evaluating not by the civil servants, but for example, thank you for bringing strong equality bodies, being by the people, by NGOs, by the citizens. Is this working for us? This is transformative policy. You need to test if this is working. If you didn't create any more discrimination by doing your policy, sorry, this is for me a basis of good governance, testing if it's working in reality, and it should be done. Really, after 31 years, I can say in the beginning there was a strong women NGO movement. I see a lack of this one as well, collectively, responding collectively, going to the streets, asking politicians, what are you doing, asking them, evaluating them. It's not being done anymore, so I really want a strong movement again, strong equality bodies who can, if citizens themselves cannot go to the politicians, you can go through equality bodies or the human rights institution, collaborating on this one and being tested and being questioned by stakeholders like them. It is the only way to go, sorry.
Mm-hmm. And I would add that local level is very important because they know more about the needs of women and girls at local level, and they also have less bureaucratic system in adopting policies. So they could also be an important player in testing, in experiment policies that are different from the national ones in particular areas. We are working with the Lisbon municipality, for example, on their gender equality plan, and we are, for example, we are working on a local strategy on exit programs to women in prostitution. This is an example that we are doing. So at a local level, it's important for bold policy making also.
Any more thoughts from the audience, from the room? Yes, right at the back. If you keep your hand up, the microphone will come to you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maya, and I work with the European Diplomatic Service, the EES, and I could do exactly the same question on gender mainstreaming. We work a lot with the EU as an external actor, as a global actor, and trying to mainstream into everything we do externally. So I just would love to hear a bit more on the examples from Greece you mentioned on mainstreaming, or other examples, or maybe we can have a kind of coffee or conversation around examples and tools of mainstreaming in different fields, because I think this is not it's just a tool that we use in every single policy. So it would be great to have a conversation around what we use as tools.
I can give the example, like I said, from Belgium. We are asking gender mainstreaming should be should be made in political commitment from the beginning of the government. It is in the government agreement that what they are going to do about gender mainstreaming. It's been asked by every minister what they are going to do, what policy they are going to screen based on gender mainstreaming. And then there should be a federal action plan. There is a federal action plan made on all this commitment, where they are going to mainstream gender in every political agreement they say, or every political action they will make. And then we, as an Institute for Equality between Women and Men, we screen every political commitment to test again. Maybe you think this is the only action you can have on gender mainstreaming, but it's working on this one. Like I was saying, penal law, we have said, oh my God, you're thinking that penal law is gender neutral. No, it's not gender neutral. You should be doing gender screening on this one. For example, gender and pension. For example, the care system, financial system. I was still being the fact that we did with EG together the financial independence survey. It was set before, for example, the financial economic system of women. Women, they are not get enough loan. They are not having the same access to loan or credit system in the bank. So we said, oh, test your financial system on this one. So screening all the political commitments based on data exists, use case law, use council conclusions, use EG data, and there's every possible thing that you can imagine is there. There's no such thing as an action, political action, who is gender neutral. Even your garbage bag is gendered, excuse me. So everything should be gendered, and everything should be open and public. And again, the parliament should do his job or her job or whatever the job to really test this one. Oh my God, that you. Okay, you have mentioned that you will do gender mainstreaming, but it is working in the reality. That you didn't only tip the box.
Mm-hmm. And on IGA's webpage, there is a lot of gender mainstreaming by political sector, which is very important. There are also a lot of toolkits on how to do gender budgeting, gender procurement, gender audit. So there are a lot of tools. We have to adapt them to our national context. I know that the Gender Flagship Project also are developing national tools and also giving training. So this is connected, so tools, creating tools and training. And giving the expertise also to the sectors is very important. I know that the Gender Flagship Project in Portugal is approaching 2 sectors. So it's the environmental sector, for example, and the digital one. So also looking at these sectors is important to gender mainstreaming because they are new, let's say like this. So more keen to have this type of gender mainstreaming strategies implemented.
A good example this morning, as we talked when someone talked about the FRA and the EG survey on gender-based violence, because you can't go and say you have to do gender mainstreaming and only working for women. A good example this is also for men, but I'm using always. In every member state, the help centers, how we are creating help for victims of gender-based violence, it is based on women's aid. Men don't talk, so all our services is really based and built upon victims, women victims. So we know that men, if they are victims of violence, they don't speak out, they do not report. Boys don't cry. This is a gender issue, boys don't cry. But if boys don't cry, this is a gender issue, and your institution is based on women, helping women, and you're not doing anything about it, then you're creating more discrimination. So I'll give them an example. Rebuild and rethink how you are going to help victims. Maybe you have to have another system to help a man being victims of violence and gender-based violence. This is an example.
Sorry, Marika.
Okay.
Can I just jump in here? I know that there will be other examples of gender mainstreaming in the room. Can you put your hand up if you've got a good example? Right here. Okay. I know that question's the next question, but I'm just going to finish this question over here. Just very quickly, your example of gender mainstreaming, how it's working. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Pavla Špondra. I'm from the Czech Republic. And I personally train about methodology of gender impact assessment. What we do, it is for state officials. And I wanted to add this comment. The thing is, the problem is that when we want people, these officials, to put the result of the gender impact assessment into the explanatory statement or something, there is the political will, political representatives are against. So that's the problem. We have tools, we have a big strategy in the Czech Republic with hundreds of tasks, but the really backlash, the visible backlash, especially in our country, is the political representation. And it's through whole the political spectrum. That's my frustration. I wanted to share it with you because it also is connected with Social Democrats, of course, with the right-wing parties. We have Greens, but they are very weak. They are not even in parliament. So that is the most visible, I think, backlash or the distraction, because people of power they don't really think, or they cannot perform this as important because they would be seen as neo-Marxists or too woke or something, and it is really very wide. So we have a tool. I think it's really practical tool. There is no kind of result of the gender impact assessment that the law or the activity is gender neutral. That's no way it can result like this. It has a positive impact or negative impact, or the impact is neutral, but it strengthens the inequalities, so it should not be supported. There are briefly the results.
Thank you for sharing that.
If anybody is interested, I would also be interested to share this with
Okay,
you.
turn around the room so everyone can see you. Stand up again. Just show your face so everyone can see you at the back. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm sending the microphone back to where you were standing before, because I thank you for patiently waiting. This is probably the last question for this session. Go ahead.
Okay. So, Vishnja Bacanovic, UN Women. I just wanted to share that there are examples of gender mainstreaming in instrument from pre-accession funded by EU in Western Balkans countries within negotiations and accession, which is unique also contribution where tools, internals, procedure review has been developed. So it is, I think, really important because there are also sector analyses in different clusters and negotiation chapters that can also be used now in Eastern Partnership countries that are accessing. So this is something, and of course, gender responsive budgeting, very successful since 2008. In different tools, also capacity building, and we will be happy to share more, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, turn around so everyone can see what you look like from UN Women. Thank you. So when we have our reception, you're going to be very busy. All right, very good. In our final 10 minutes together, it's so easy to get dragged down the rabbit hole of what is not working, right? But what is working that we can focus on? And I suppose what we're looking at, the do's and the don'ts. Alexandra, you start first, because we're trying to strengthen gender equality policies, not just complain about the ones that we have and why they're not working. What will make them work?
So what's working, it's the policy development. If you look at, and today in the morning we spoke about that, for example, on violence against women, we have the directive, we have the Istanbul Convention. So policy development is working. Now we have to look at the implementation. And this is where somehow we know that is failing, the implementation, because it's up to member state level. And member states are composed of different political parties, or run by different political parties and interests. So this is the challenging. It's not only to have this at the EU level, but how member states then really implement what is defined at the EU level. We also think that we have good, for example, we had the Digital Service Act, which is a kind of a piece of regulation that really can have an impact on the lives of women and men. So we are hoping that this Digital Service Act can counteract against hate speech, online hate speech, cyber violence, and all the forms that forms of violence that we know that are happening on the online space. Because at the end, it's all related to the space. So when it's come to public space, women are less represented. So less power, less economic empowerment, etc., etc. And online is another space where women are less represented and are more often subject of violence and objectivation, sexualization. So we have good laws, in fact, at European level. The problem is how to implement them and how to make them work for women. We need to have, for example, the multi-annual financial framework to adopt a dual approach, not only mainstreaming gender into their programs and their regulation, but also to have specific funding for women's rights NGOs, to gender equality. We had, for example, Daphne program, to continue to have it at the next multi-annual financial framework. That will be very important. That would be also important to monitor, as you said, monitor, evaluate, and then improve. We think that sometimes monitoring is happening, but what is getting out of it, the lessons learned, are not really put into practices. So we, as I don't know if it's my final words, we need to end sexism for sure. We need to end male violence against women and girls, and we need to shift the money and power to those that really are putting our societies working, and mostly it is women. If you look at the care economy, it's women there, so we need to put the balance on power and on money on the hands of women.
Thank you. Marika.
I can't say I agree less. here. We have regulations, sorry. The law in Belgium is working. Is it enough? No, but it's working. It's a standard goal. It is there. Civil service has to oblige the law. You can monitor and you can evaluate. Someone was asking this morning, shouldn't we have an EU directive on gender mainstreaming? I'll leave it there. We have data, we have survey, using data, using survey, using the EGE index, using all the surveys, using the FRA survey. We have a lot of surveys. Use them. It's working if you tailor them straight to it. And if it's not working, really, we have to have strong equality bodies. I really do, as an experience, we have a really strong gender equality body in Belgium. It is working, and we are really in good relation, always with civil servants. We are in good relation with NGOs, having collaboration, really strong collaboration, having a really strong, with really good means, equality body is working. Also for the citizens, also for the victims. We can support victims, and you can go way through the government. You can have relations that, and we have case law, use case law. Equality bodies can go to court and can create case law. Why not using them and checking where the money goes? This is where we have to do.
Follow the money.
Follow the money, sorry.
Out of this 70-minute conversation, what did you enjoy the most, Alexandra? Do not say the end.
No, it's very useful to get to know other practices on gender mainstreaming. We were a strong defender of gender mainstreaming as a strategy for reaching equality between women and men. Sometimes we doubted along this road that it's really working. But still, we believe that gender mainstreaming can reach equality, but also the positive actions. So working on both approaches is needed. So yeah, I think it's still going. Gender mainstreaming is still a need for it, but also the dual approach shows looking at specific women's rights and supporting women's rights NGOs. That's very important.
Marika, what gave you joy in this conversation?
I never thought that this morning I said to someone, I will have to try to make gender mainstreaming sexy again. I think we managed for a part. That's my goal today.
When we started our conversation, there were three things that jumped out at me from when we had three panelists. Also, remarkable for us to lose a panelist because he had to go home to take care of the children. So maybe we're making more progress than we think. So, Marika, you saying that we had to look at gender mainstreaming even though it wasn't sexy and just do it. Alexandra, you said to be bold, which I think we have to do for all of gender equality. And then for Nikolai, he says, do not give up the pressure, even though we are in a battle with values. Thank you to everybody who was part of this session. Alexandra, Marika, thank you for wrapping us up in style. I really appreciate you. You'll be applauded as you walk off the stage.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Joining us via video, the Minister for Gender Equality and Diversity for Luxembourg is Ulrike Backes. You will see Ulrike Backes right here on the video screen.
Dear all, allow me to share some thoughts with you from Luxembourg today, as I cannot be with you in person in Brussels. The second edition of the Gender Equality Forum could not come at a better moment. These times are very challenging indeed when it comes to women's and girls' rights. We are witnessing pushbacks on a global scale in every part of the world, even in countries we usually consider to be like-minded. This is a very worrying tendency, but it is also a call for action for all of us to be vigilant, to push back, and not to stop defending human rights. Our ministry and myself are determined to do our part. We are working hard on fighting against gender-based violence, dismantling stereotypes, and promoting inclusion and diversity on all levels of society. Our approach is an intersectional one. When women's rights are threatened, the rights of LGBTIQ+ tend to be threatened as well, and the rights of people of color and of minorities. When women's rights are threatened, indeed, all of our rights are threatened. That is why a whole-of-society approach is required in pushing back. And that includes the engagement of men and boys. We need their support, their voice, and their commitment to equality, because it's also in their interest. Feminism is not a dirty word. It translates into more equality, more justice, and more freedom for all genders, for our societies at large. I know that the European Institute for Gender Equality is right there to fight this good fight with us. They are a key data provider in Europe and allow us to design evidence-based and progressive policies, which is crucial in our work on a European and on national levels. I wish you all the very best at the forum and look forward to our continued important work together in the future. Thank you.